there. Welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. I'm Jack. It's episode 137.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers.
And we're so pleased to be joined back again. Just last fall, we had Tim Porter with us from Porter O'Brien, a government relations firm here in Fredericton, based in Fredericton, but services Atlantic Canada and all across Canada, actually. So, Tim, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to dissect and get your opinions and your analysis of New Brunswick's budget that was just dropped this week.
My pleasure, Jack. Do my best.
Okay, well, I know your best is better than most, so thank you very much, Tim. We're very, very happy to have you. So, well, guys, let's jump in. And first off, Tim, tell us your thoughts about the budget that was dropped down this week.
Well, I mean, budgets are boring, as we all know. They're not overly interesting, and people may look at the headlines and they would see from the headlines that about the deficit and the debt and those type of measures. But when you dig down a little bit further, I think you do see a semblance of a government in its first few months that are trying to carve out some priorities.
And how they did announce, the government announced a projected, that can always change by the time a year goes by, but a $550 million deficit, something that the Premier promised that she would not do. How do you think the New Brunswickers so far have reacted to that?
Well, I don't know if they've reacted at all yet. Yeah. I mean, they're wrapping their heads around that. Yeah. I don't know if that's the marquee promise of the Liberal government. Right. It's probably more to do with health care than anything else. But yes, it was a promise. But I mean, once you get in government and you get under the hood, you see that there are more realities there than you realized when you were an opposition party. Mm-hmm. So the government has indicated that we'll be looking at deficits for the next 4 years, most definitely. Now they're trying to tie that to GDP and try to keep a lid on it a bit. Mm-hmm. But I think in doing that, as I said, they do have priority spending areas that they're trying to address.
Similar to Jack's question, though, Tim, what do you think now, not just because it's a broken promise, but deficit spending in the next upcoming few years, basically the mandate of the government, what do you think that deficit spending, how do you think that will impact voter preference or the political climate in New Brunswick? And do you think it'll have any impact at all?
Not immediately. I mean, we may see a little bit of that debate going on as we enter the federal election and people kind of confuse kind of the two matters and the Liberal Party and that sort of thing. And there may be some discussion there, but I don't think there's going to be an initial impact to that. I think that there really wasn't any choice, particularly as we get into the issue of the tariffs. New Brunswick certainly wasn't going to be able to balance its budget because of that issue alone, let alone all the other issues that have been impacting them. There's, the Trudeau had his HST holiday, which took a big cut into the budget, and there's all kinds of threats that go on that are hard to anticipate, and I think that's the result that we're seeing today.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably not overly surprising to see the deficit. With this government, I guess Susan Holt's been hinting at that. She was on our last episode, mm-hmm. The Carr Brothers, and really basically said we're expecting a deficit budget. So. Now, you've seen quite several years of these budgets. Anything stand out that surprised you at all, Tim, or got you excited, or any type of difference, or we just changed the top of the heading on the cover?
Well, I as I said, they're fairly boring as they're presented by the finance department. So where there's any excitement, as you would know, is when the estimate process comes forward and we see the details in given departments in terms of what our priority spending are. and it's going to be interesting when health and education comes forward. Certainly, we don't have a lot of information on what's going on in some of the smaller departments like tourism and that sort of thing. So it'd be nice to know where the spending is going to go, particularly, in tourism when we look to more Canadians looking to spend time in Canada over the next year as opposed to going to the United States for vacation. So what are the points of attraction that we're going to be investing in to make sure we get that fair share of the market, particularly as we always look to Quebec to come over to New Brunswick because we're a bilingual province, and they seem very at home here. So,
In the budget, did the government make any mention, or did you hear any talk of any type of internal savings cuts, redirecting of funds? Or were they silent on that pretty well?
Well,
Did you hear,
there is a fund that they've created, a rainy day fund, I guess, as we used to call it. But yeah, there's a fund like that are there for contingencies, particularly around the tariffs.
Yeah, but did they mention anything about trying to find
tax
it?
increases.
Well, they're trying to find any savings in government programs, or will that be in the estimates?
No, actually, yeah, I think that's a good point, Jody. I think there was a little bit of a criticism that we didn't hear a lot about maybe some addressing red tape and that sort of thing, and it wasn't immediately evident. So I guess we'll have to see, but they're probably. I think there was some indication over the last day that maybe there'll be some tabling of legislation that deals with maybe addressing some fiscal matters. So
maybe the municipalities of some sort.
Maybe we'll see that soon. Yeah, there wasn't a lot on municipalities either. So that shoes to.
But they did talk about injecting some money into municipalities. So it'll be interesting to see when the estimates happen and we get to see those numbers, if that's new money or if that's money that normally is injected into municipalities. That changes, but the municipalities have been crying for fiscal reform on that for quite some time.
Absolutely.
That's what he talked about legislation for, maybe.
Maybe that's
maybe
what
I'm
that's
wrong.
for.
But I guess any budget, they don't really talk about what cuts there are in departments. No. And I guess you have to find that out in estimates when
a good critic
when they
will have
ask.
to dig into that.
I would like to know. You'd want to know what's been repurposed. You usually have these items have been reduced, eliminated, cut from the department, but I have twice as much spending, so it's moved into that. So is it all spending on the front, or for the conservative base in New Brunswick, or maybe households, have they tried to look for more savings?
Yeah, and my guess is no. That's just a guess. I don't know. I'm not obviously speaking on behalf, but I don't think they've really lifted under the hood, as they say. I think that in their first budget, that would be the time that they would mention things maybe, but maybe they sort of want to brand it and be a clear contrast to the Higgs government that way. But they're still in the quote-unquote honeymoon stage. And I always thought that most of the budgets, the projections before budgets were rolled out is, if we don't do anything, we're going to have $500 million, $600 million deficit. All you guys all heard those sort of things, and then challenges had to be made. And here we are with a $550 million deficit. So, and I would have thought that if it was going to happen, it would be the first year or the second year coming. Because typically you don't make those tough choices in year 3 and 4 when you're trying to get reelected. So I'm not sure on this. I don't see where there's an appetite really to get real efficient and find some of those savings, in my opinion. But
to be innovative, make change.
I know they talk about it. Like the finance minister said, we're going to have some tough decisions down the road. The premier said it on her show. We're going to have tough decisions on the down the road, but I haven't seen anything yet. Haven't even seen any projections that they're looking at efficiency.
Maybe they're just staying away from talking about those.
Maybe.
That'd be interesting too.
Yeah.
I think it's only been 4 months here that they've been in. So I guess, it seems like what their priority has been is to ensure that they can fund their broad stroke promises. Right. So, elimination of the HST from NB Power bills, was a big one, and that was a big hit. What was it, 90 or 100 million, or quite a bit.
Significant. Yeah.
And
nurse bonuses was another big
they
one.
funded the nurse bonuses program. They I guess they're trying to figure out the community health center project, which is really their marquee promise. A lot's riding on that, and they promised 30 of those, 10 in the first year, I think, or so. And so, I mean, there's a lot of pressure to rebuild the healthcare system. As it's been, it's kind of been squeezed of some of the. There's a lot of money spent in healthcare. Don't get me wrong, but certain areas have been squeezed quite hard, and you have to rebuild it. Addressing doctors, I think, is another thing. That they have to in recruitment and that sort of thing. And lastly, I guess just priorities in education and the nutrition program and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess if we saw $500 million worth of cuts, then there'd probably be a reaction, negative reaction towards that too by a lot of people. Tim, did you see anybody speak against the budget? Anyone upset? Anyone unhappy?
Well,
groups or organizations?
Yeah, we heard David Kuhn speaking on his frustration over
his own budget.
His own budget a few days ago,
which everybody knows is related to the number of MLAs you have in the House. But anyway.
He lost an MLA, and thus he lost some funding. But no, more recently, I'm recalling at least hearing him yesterday and this morning about the health centers and how I think the doctors and others had pegged that $50 million a year was needed to fund that, and that they only put $30 million towards it, and the finance minister said, well, the health minister says he can do it with $30 million. So, the promise is 10 in the first year. I've heard them talking about maybe 2, maybe 3 thus far, but I haven't heard any more yet.
No.
Anybody else speak, like any organization? It didn't sound like there was anybody really complaining about the budget. Maybe it's just going to be a non-event, really.
Yeah, I've heard, I heard Richard Scion and people like that speaking generally about, debts and deficits. But no, I didn't hear a chorus of.
No. I don't think people are overly surprised that there's a deficit. I think because starting last fall and then after the inauguration, I think people just come to either A, expect that at some point the surpluses would go away, B, the Liberal Party normally run more of a deficit to make sure services get provided. So I don't really think there's a big surprise. I've been monitoring some of my colleagues, my former colleagues have kind of shared some budget information, and it's a mixed reaction. There's quite a number of people commenting saying, well, we'd rather have services funded rather than have a surplus to pay on the debt. So I think it's just... It's the way of the public nowadays. Most people have debt anyhow, and
it's a tricky
they would rather have their services, and I don't know.
It's a tricky thing. I saw Sherry Wilson, an MLA from Albert County, said her comment when she shared the statement or something said sad.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's kind of an interesting approach, because I know the balanced budget is a key thing, but overall, generally in the long term, but when you've got all of the spending for all of these kind of services and housing and healthcare, but you're putting in new money to those, how difficult is it for the opposition, Tim, to speak against
the Debbie Downer,
be the Debbie Downer, say that
number
this
one
is
is
sad.
their job.
Well, then not necessarily to be completely negative.
Well, there's nothing wrong, and I watched, saw Glenn Savoy react a couple of times, and there's nothing wrong with the questions he's asking largely. So no, I mean, as Jeff says, that's their job.
Well,
they have to present that.
What are you hearing from them?
But well, I mean, they're just picking up on the broken promise kind of theme as well, and that's what they're going to do. I mean, obviously, that's the first place you go.
It's a big promise.
So it is. But I mean, right now, when you look at what people have anxiety about, it's about the healthcare system, and it's about the tariffs.
For sure.
And it's about supporting our businesses as we go into this. And we're not even into it yet. But this tariff threat that we're entering into is going to require support from government. And I think they've put aside $120 million, I think, to various programs to help support business.
Some of it's repackaged money, and there is some extra. I think 20 to 40 in that area is new money.
That's right. Yeah.
Some of it's just repurposed loans that nobody's using.
Sure.
Because you can't access it basically through all.
But why were they not using it? I mean,
well, we all have our analogies on that when you talk about opportunities.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in the next segment. So on that note, let's take a quick break, and people can check out the public service announcements in the advertisements that CHCO will broadcast while we have our little break, and we'll be right back with you in a few minutes.
Hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 137. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers, and Jack.
Very pleased. We're talking about the New Brunswick budget, 2025-26. It was just dropped this week, so we're discussing that with Tim Porter. Long time, he was a former journalist and now a co-owner of Porter O'Brien, a government relations and media consulting company based out of Fredericton, but services Atlantic Canada and Canada. And actually showing a lot of growth in your business, Tim. So it's great to have you on our show.
Thank you, Jack.
Really appreciate it. For people that are watching, we really do want to thank our viewers as well. And we're on CHCO TV, so we got to thank the crew on CHCO TV for having us on New Brunswick's only independent TV channel, which is also picked up by Rogers TV, Shaw, and Bell. So we're in every household that has cable in New Brunswick. We're available on CHCO TV. Plus, you can catch us on YouTube and on Facebook. So let's keep talking about the budget. Exactly. We've been talking about it already, leading up into the second segment. So what do we want to talk about in this second segment, guys?
Well, the recap is no major pushback against the budget.
Right.
It's $500 and almost $600 million deficit, and sounds like they've responded to a lot of their campaign promises of more spending for social housing, education, healthcare in particular. It's a big promise. So seems like it's not much of a surprise, as Susan Holt, the premier, has basically softened the thought by New Brunswickers. Plus, we see what's happening around the world with the tariff and Trump. We have no idea what's going to happen next year, let alone next month, with everything that's been happening. So, Tim, how does a government or any organization, this uncertainty in the world, this uncertainty with Trump, how's that affecting your clients and also, in your opinion, people of New Brunswick?
Well, I think people are preparing. So we've had a couple of months now to wrap our heads around the fact that insecurity is going to be the go forward here. I don't think we're ever going to have complete clarity unless we have a comprehensive trade agreement re-signed in North America, and that was not scheduled to happen until 2026. So if we can advance that and get the discussions going, obviously we're going to have a federal election here this spring, which is good. We'll now be able to get that over with and clear the deck, and then we can get down to addressing this as a country, because it kind of the provinces have been stepping up quite a bit. Our premiers, they've been going down to Washington and they've advocating on our behalf, and because the Prime Minister had to step aside at a very inconvenient time in terms of that issue. So to have a new prime minister, hopefully in a couple of months, and to have our premiers working in tandem with them, then maybe we can start to address that and try to get it resolved. And if we can't resolve it with the Americans, I mean, we're also looking at other markets and other opportunities. We have lots of other trade agreements with Europe and Southeast Asia. So, our businesses are looking there to see what they can access for new markets. And maybe we can find some more security through diversification of our trade as opposed to unilateral with the United States. I think New Brunswick was the top percentage trader with the U.S. weren't we at 90%?
St. John was the top city.
Yeah.
That was affected by the tariffs, most at risk.
Yeah, with all our exports there. Yeah.
Well, it certainly will change the way the approach to doing business worldwide, and you can never unwind the clock now on that. You can't unring the bell of what's just happened over the last couple of months. So it's probably it is a good thing that it forces New Brunswick government, New Brunswick businesses, other governments that we deal with in the country to start rethinking, retooling, and be more self-sufficient, I guess, and sustainable and more you survive. Find a better way to survive.
So I mean, we're all of a sudden we're looking to trade with each other in terms of provinces a little bit more. That's always been there's been a lot of obstacles to that, and it's a two-way sword on that. I mean, when we may get open to other markets to trade, but they get to come here as well. And we're right beside Quebec, who has a big manufacturing market, and so there is a concern that they may flood our market a little bit, so it's not all sunny on the taking down the barriers between provinces, but it obviously has to be done to try to find new markets, at least amongst ourselves.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the economic benefit, or if there's ever been a real study of the cost of business, of the barriers between provinces and what industries, and if they do work so hard to bring those down, what's going to be the net benefit of the country? Is it the same amount of money that's just being shuffled around in the country, or maybe less will be spent on government fees and taxes?
It's been really hard to get an answer on that, hasn't it? We've had, like, the Premier on, and other guests, and it's really been hard to get a nailed down answer on what it actually means.
It's something we can talk about, we can point to as interprovincial trade, but what's the real cost?
Well, how do you break it down?
And how do you, I mean, it must be very hard to juggle. You want to be a team player as a province, but you also want to protect the province as well. That's why we have 30 or 40 exemptions for barriers with Canada, and to be able to protect New Brunswick. So that's going to be a tough balance.
Well, it'll be interesting.
Well, Renee talked about, I think in the budget, or somebody did in one of the speeches, about they were willing to remove 50%, the province of New Brunswick is. So it'll be interesting if it can be done, to have a report out there so that New Brunswick can see what is 50%, what does that mean, and what is the 50% that we really need to hang on to, because there, like you say, there is some protectionism that we need to
what
guard.
Industries, yeah.
Right. What does it mean? Is it just wine going back and forth from Halifax to here, or craft beer,
or is it real?
Or what is it?
Or is it just more?
How do you turn that into GDP? I guess so.
And is it paperwork by the government that's the barrier for companies coming in or moving in?
Tape.
Is that what we're talking about? They've got to pay an extra fee. So now is this going to have an impact on the revenue of the government because of fees, or is it got an actual real impact on the economy as well? So we'll have to see.
And I think we speak in the terms of most New Brunswickers. Most of us don't know what it means. Unless you're an economist and you know how to dig right into it.
And that's the value, I guess, of, regardless of which party, but having an effective opposition and having a relevant media so that those things can be asked of the government. get some answers on that.
Were there any tough questions of the whole government this week by media or the opposition?
Today would have been the only opposition day so far.
Question period.
Question period was today.
Wednesday.
Today, yeah, there was no QP on Tuesday, so Wednesday there would have been, and Thursday there won't be.
Just Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah. Were you, was Porter O'Brien involved with the media kind of response, or at least attended any of it? Did you have any sense of how the media is playing out on this and whether they were asking any tough questions or not? Or?
Well, I think after it's only been 24 hours, so after the first day, I think the media largely concentrated on the debt and deficit issue.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the prominent headlines, and they were, making quite a bit of issue around that broken promise. But
yeah, exactly. But really, what else is there?
I'm not sure exactly what came out of QP. I did hear rumbling that they were talking about Porter O'Brien and some of the QP questions, but I don't know the details. It would be public, but I didn't listen to it.
It was just around the fact that we were asked to help assist when the premier went down to Washington. So the Council of the Federation hires a lobbyist firm, but they work for all 13
provinces,
and
territories, yes,
and set up meetings and that sort of thing. So we were asked if we had any connections to any firms down there that would know Republicans, because they need to talk to Republicans to get the president's ear.
Who's a Republican?
So we did, and we knew a Republican firm that had good relations and could book meetings. So New Brunswick agenda could be heard
separate from the other 13.
Heard in, and everyone kind of does that. They go on their own thing. So
I'm surprised that
we
they
assisted
took their
with that.
time in QP to go at that instead of budget.
Must have been a cost to it or something.
Well, there's not a whole lot of cost.
No,
I mean,
so
in the grand scheme of things, not a big cost.
In American dollars, I think we're paying 30,000 American or something, but it's not a lot of dollars.
No, I wonder what the issue was.
But
that's just it. They don't have.
I don't know,
and it's not anything against the opposition, I don't think, but there's just not a lot to poke holes in right now. I don't see myself. So I guess you got to go on with what you think. There might be a little bit.
And we know how QP question, we'd set that stuff up in opposition. Sometimes we just come up with it when we get there that morning, and somebody comes up with an idea and we want to get on the agenda and ask questions.
And it's true, and it's not always the
never
question.
did it that way.
It's not only that.
Right. But you know how the agenda can go sideways at caucus.
Well, that's true. And it's not always the question, though, either. It's throw out the question. Might be...
See what you get for an answer.
Minuscule, might be not a major thing, but it could be the answer that turns into the big blow up.
That's true.
So
now Point LaPro is down. There's a story on the headline of that. I wonder if that was asked.
Again?
And it's $900,000 a day.
Oh, my goodness.
If anyone wants to ask questions of something that's affecting our pocketbooks, here I'm going to be now Mr. Opposition guy.
Well, you were great in opposition.
Thank you. But
twice.
The point is that showing up in any type of pushback, especially meters that are,
And don't forget, Jody, the Premier said just a week ago when she was asked what's on the table. What's on the table is selling NB Power on the table? Well,
it's not off the table.
Not off the table. Not off the table. And you know what? It's been since the Sean Graham day. What's that? 15 years ago now that we visited that. And maybe appetites have changed in that regard. People up and down the River Valley were not happy this winter with their power bills, even though they did get that HST rebate.
Didn't see it.
Didn't amount to much.
They still had the whatever it was. If it was smart meters or whatever it was, we didn't get a clear answer as to why rates went up. I mean, there was a rate increase, I guess, in January, but
would this be something
doesn't seem to account for the usage
from a public policy and political perspective? Maybe it had to get bad before the public might be willing to give up what they thought maybe at the time people were a little grumpy about power rates, but they didn't see major, deep ingrained problems that we're seeing 15 years later.
But I mean, the stumbling block has always been Point Lepreau. In that I don't think Quebec ever wanted Point Lepreau because of the decommissioning and that sort of thing. And, of course, now we've got Mactaquac that has to be refurbished. And, you know, that probably will go forward regardless. But that's a big, going to be a huge cost.
Huge cost. And it's always more than what's projected. But.
Yeah.
But so do you see the NB Power could be vulnerable towards the government?
Well, I think there's a bit of an issue there. I think that you know, I think the Premier's signaling of that may have indicated maybe a little bit of frustration with, and she's all about transparency, about the transparency part of it. So I think we'll see how that goes. Yeah,
maybe just a little float out for two, eh?
Maybe. Well, and I think the strategy from the progressive conservative opposition, they have to skate on that pretty carefully, because it was the party that saved NB Power. The more that they push on NB Power and really scrutinize and really ask, even though that fits in line with the affordability of Susan Holt's promises and the prices of power rates, and they are high and things like that. But if it's the opposition seen as pushing it hard. And then that could play in the role of the Liberal government of saying, well, you've pushed so hard now, we're going to now do this and do that. So PCs have to be sort of careful what they wish for, in my opinion, because it could backfire. People love to criticize NB Power until we saw 15 years ago we were willing to sell it. And then people said, well, okay, well, it's like the family. Okay, well, we can kind of squabble a little bit internally, but now that someone's going to come and take it, then that's what created the big backlash. So I think the opposition has to be careful, just tread on that one. I think they are treading on it. They'd have to be very careful how they're going to approach that.
Well, there weren't a lot of great feelings about NB Power up and down the River Valley over the last few months when they saw their power bills.
Yes, so, and led by those MLAs, those PC MLAs too. So that response.
That's right, Margaret Johnson
and Bill Hogan. And
you're right. So maybe
Richard
the horse
Ames,
good point, guys.
Especially those three. Yeah. We're really adamant about the smart meters, about the rates going up.
And in my area where I live, we have a Liberal member on one side of it, obviously, in the New Maryland side, and then over in Ormukta side, we have Mary. The rates I see on social media, that their bills, people in our areas, their bills went up too, and quite a fair number of them. I didn't hear either one of those members saying much about it, but it's not just the Upper River Valley. It seemed to trickle all the way down through, and something that a couple people have pointed out to me is that you guys were the ones that lost your power last year. So you had like a week or two of not paying any power in 2024 or 2023, sorry. And then when it came to 2024, you're paying for an extra 2 weeks. But I still see people talking about their bills are up. And so I'll be watching when the report comes that NB Power is supposed to bring in April, I think it is. It's supposed to be finalized. And I watched Lori Clark and her team at Public Accounts when they came in to talk about their report. They were given 3 weeks to bring it forward. Not enough time. Takes you a full week to get your scope of work sorted out and what you're supposed to do, and then hire a firm to look after it for you. So there's another week. So they didn't have enough time, and probably should have just canceled the Public Accounts meeting, really.
That's what I would have done. If I was the chair.
Or changed the agenda.
If I was the chair or a committee member, I would have said, no, okay, let's just postpone it.
Yep.
We won't need
not
to
ready,
talk
put
today.
A press release out justifying
That's
it
what I would have.
instead of doing how they went. But anyway, interesting discussion on the NB Power side and where the future of that lies.
And the impact on public policy, on political parties.
And
especially with the infrastructure that's going to be due to be refurbished or shut down over time.
And was there any talk in the budget about power or government assuming the debt or anything like that? Any discussions about energy or in the budget?
Not that I saw.
No, because it was interesting then that's a key issue, but still, well, we're probably near the end of this segment, but on that note, a lot more to keep watching for and listening. And we have talked before about having someone on from NB Power, Lori, maybe the CEO, to give us an update of the goings on there. So, okay.
Yeah, so let's take a short break, and we'll be back to you after these public service announcements.
Hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. My name is Jack. It's episode 137.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers, excitedly talking about this week's budget in the provincial government in New Brunswick. And even better, we have Tim Porter from Porter O'Brien, longtime journalist, experienced writer, policy, communication, government, and now with his private firm that's very successful and expanding. So, Tim, it's a great pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now,
being here, Tim.
Jack, you asked him a question last year. Tim, you were last year during the throes of the beginnings or near the election campaign, right?
Yes.
And Jack asked you if you had a chance to meet with the Premier, what would you say?
Yeah, that's right. And the leaders at the time.
And the leaders,
yeah.
Right.
Did you want to repeat that question for now, Jack?
So fast forward 6 months, I guess, and if those conversations would be, what would they look like, Tim? If you talk to the Premier, up to the first 4 months of her mandate, including most recently the budget dropping, what would you say to her if you had coffee?
Well,
maybe you have already. I
think I'd praise her emphasis on transparency. She's done a lot of things in the last little while to change the tone of government and to ensure that she's responsive to people. She's just instituted in last week, I believe, she'll do a Thursday noon hour press conference where she answers questions and addresses issues that have come before her office over the last week, and and largely that's around the tariff issue. But I mean, there are other issues that will likely come up as that goes forward. But it just indicates a level of access to the Premier that we could have, and she has had a good presence on social media. She's got to watch her, that she's not overexposed. On occasion, maybe she does do a lot of social media hits where she gets out in front of issues like the budget, and maybe she should let the finance minister take up the rein a little bit more, particularly when it's tougher stuff.
Yeah,
but
because I thought, and I agree with you, really great job of providing that breath of fresh air of the Monday videos
update
of what's coming up through the week, and then now the Thursday. But how long can that be sustained to do now? 2 posts, the Monday and then the Thursday, as you mentioned, and it's her predominantly the voice and the face of the government. When does that? Or does it at all get branched out, as you mentioned, to some of the other ministers, and so that she's not carrying the whole load?
There are other ministers that do try this.
Yeah.
Now she does it on video and does it quite prominently on Mondays, where she talks very specifically about her meetings over the coming week. Other ministers I've seen have maybe written that out in a post on Facebook or other platforms where they indicate, what they're going to be doing. Other ministers may be a little slower to that because maybe it needs something that has to be developed over time. Yeah. Obviously, we've all worked in government, and we know that probably the civil servants are not crazy about all that.
You can hear them now, Tim.
All that access.
And don't answer your own questions off of Facebook. You're responding. You could say something.
Well,
you might say something.
And you mentioned the Thursday noon hour newsers. I think what's good about that too, for logistically, is then you can time block, and so the comms people, if maybe it's a Tuesday, they want to get a comment from the Premier. Well, no, instead of her running out all the time doing media, it's okay. Well, you've got a time blocked time. Ask that on Thursday.
That time
so you're pushing that into time block because.
It can be very distracting.
That's hard to manage.
It can be distracting.
Yeah, Tim, you would have seen
individual departments. Well, Tim, you were at CMB, Communications in Brunswick. But for me, I know, and you.
It's daily.
It can be daily, and it can be multiple times through the day that you get an email from your comms director saying, you have questions from CHSJ or now the Maryland-Sunbury leader or whoever, and you have to keep repeating that over. So doing it once a week
minimum,
for general topics, and you get some one-offs here and there, I guess, of of individual requests, but it's an ability to focus a time block, like you say, and not be chasing.
Absolutely. Well, Jody will remember back when the Centennial Building was an active thing, and we had a cabinet room on the second floor there. And when cabinet was in on a Thursday, reporters would stake out the cabinet room, and there'd be a regular every week scrum of ministers going in and out of cabinet. Those times changed when they moved across the street to Chancery Place because of security. So you didn't get that same kind of interaction of flow. So I guess, as to Jack's point, this is just a scheduled event now that occurs and is a little more structured.
Well, it was the best feeling now that you brought up going to the cabinet and going out into the hallway. Well, it was either a nervous feeling or it was a good feeling, but you could go out in the hallway and I'd always remember the backdrops of the people like Vaughn Blaney and Sheldon Lee and Marcel Merzereau and Ann Bro, especially Ann Bro, but anyway, I digress. But that transparency and opportunity maybe isn't there, or is easy to put a barrier in place. So now Susan Holt specifically scheduling,
more controlled,
and being out there and being accessible is refreshing from a political point of view over recent history in our province, but also federally. It becomes very difficult.
Oh yeah, I know it's a little off topic, but still connected somewhat. Is federally the speaking of that, Jody, and access and timely, and the federal Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre announcing that they're not going to have reporters on the bus or the plane. That's a new thing
during an election.
Long-standing tradition is that the media is on the federal leaders' planes and buses. So this is the first time, maybe in a long, long time, I'm not sure how long, but that's not going to be permitted. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's, I think, slowly changing. I mean, we've seen that at the provincial level. That has occurred. The last election campaign, I don't think reporters traveled with
any of them.
The premier had a bus, but no one was on it other than him and a couple of staffers.
Was that the nature of the media nowadays, or was it the leader's choice?
That was the leader's choice, I believe.
I think so. And there's not a great, there's not as many reporters at pool as there once was. But anyway, we saw that at the provincial level. And Mr. Poilievre has, had some issues with reporters, particularly of the CBC bent. So maybe it's a little indication of trying things differently and trying to get to Canadians in a different way than through the media. But we'll see how that goes. I think the federal Liberal Party seems to have taken a different stance, particularly when it comes to the future of the CBC. So I think that's very much on the agenda.
This campaign
is the CBC and how it looks in terms of whether we have TV, whether we fund that, or we stick with radio. I mean, certainly the CBC has been vital to our national identity and our unity and that sort of thing. And particularly radio, I think, really binds us together. TV's a little different thing in that we're all kind of going to streaming, and we're consuming our TV a little different than we did just a decade ago. So it's a tougher market in the TV.
What do you think about an election based on the CBC, protecting the CBC or defunding the CBC? What type of results, and do you see that as a strategy of either party?
Yeah, I think it's an issue. I mean, it's not going to be a defining issue, obviously, but it's certainly an issue. Yeah, and I think the Conservatives have indicated that they will defund the CBC if elected. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting, as you said, like we talked about MB Power earlier. Is this a national unity kind of sovereignty type issue where people will be that emotionally attached to CBC and what it stands for, and has it been an easy target up till now just to kind of complain about this or complain about this, but then when it's on the line, then you might lose your Canadian broadcast. We'll see if that plays into people's thoughts.
I know I would think for the Liberal Party, because they are holding on on the CBC and very vocal on it, it wouldn't be a bad strategy for them to make that as a ballot question.
I was
because
wondering
it just gets it right off of all the other 9 years of what's been happening. So
that's why it'd be interesting. It seems a little silly because you've got all the American. I also think, Tim, I mean, is this election not about who's best positioned to represent Canada, to defend Canada, to promote Canada against the United States, and again in relation to our partnerships we need to build across the world?
Yeah.
Do you see that as basically the defining issue? Or have you heard,
Yeah, I think that is, and we're being forced into that. In that, we have this issue with the United States, so it's actually had this effect in Canada where it's really brought us together and united us in a way that we haven't been articulated before to the extent that it probably could. We all kind of feel that bond, but we don't really speak it too often. And now people are talking about it, and they're showing it, and they're showing up at the hockey games and various other things where we're expressing our Canadian pride. Yeah.
So since all of this U.S. and tariff especially, and maybe since Trudeau announced his resignation, that all lined up at the same time, but the polls have adjusted and shifted in Canada. In your experience, what do you make of that, and is it sustained? Is it real?
Well, I think if I was the Conservative Party, I'd be very concerned in that. The last couple of polls I've seen, the Liberals have now edged ahead of them in the percentage count across the country. And once that starts sliding a bit, you gotta really watch out. Now, that's going to play out in individual provinces. We all know how Alberta's going to vote, and but the big question mark is how will Ontario vote, and
Exactly.
if they can split, Liberals can split Quebec and do well in Atlantic Canada, and they might have an actual fighting chance here. But
It'd be interesting to see if Trudeau left early enough or if he stayed too long to give time for Carney and the rest of the group to turn things around. But
ironically, his poll numbers went up just as he was going out the door.
Yes, because he was able to speak freely and he started, showing his stance on Trump. So I think that had a lot to do with it. People in Canada, they appreciate a fighter.
Yeah.
Well, how many times on election night
you see a
the
leader
losing premier in New Brunswick? We've seen it quite a few times actually. But then almost every time they give a speech the night that they lost. Now I didn't notice
it this one ever.
I didn't notice it this last election, but the defeated premiers seem to loosen off their shoulders and speak how they really want to speak and give a message that people say.
Look at Andrew Furey when he announced that he was stepping down in Newfoundland.
It's like they become a different person or become the real person who they are.
Right.
But Tim, did you
They're
not
as
remember
guarded.
that?
They're not as guarded.
Scripted.
And it's actually quite fascinating with Trudeau leaving and then Carney getting in and then the polls shifting in a relatively very short period of time. It just shows that we all talk about it, that people usually vote out governments and not vote in governments. And that's put the tailspin right there on the Conservative Party.
And also, I haven't seen Poilievre and the Conservatives. I haven't seen the Conservatives pivot. I'm not sure how they're actually. Maybe they're still in a standstill about how to respond to what's happening. I don't know. But
their TV advertising still emphasizes carbon.
That's what I saw on social media this week as well. Yesterday, the other day, just that axe the tax still, and I just see that as being so last month.
Yeah,
so Trudeau.
I was getting flyers on that and everything.
It is, but Carney has always indicated that the carbon tax should just be changed a little, and somewhat, and that there still should be some kind of a price on carbon. So I think the strategy for the Conservatives in Poilievre is to make people realize or think that Carney's not trustworthy.
The same book, different
can't
cover.
trust him.
Okay, maybe that's the main issue is you can't trust them, but
They're still saying axe a tax, but there's still going to be a tax on industry.
Yeah,
but you're right, Joe. But maybe
the issue.
But you're right. Maybe the messaging has to.
Maybe it's not anymore.
Maybe you're right
that is the issue.
Maybe you're right that the messaging may have to pivot some, just as the leader has changed.
Well, the Liberals never did a great job about advertising the fact that they were actually paying that out. I mean, a few people got checks, but most people got it just deposited in their bank account, and they didn't realize
like the HST.
what it was.
They even changed the title of the deposit on your statement so people would recognize it.
Well, it's like the when we had Premier Holt on about the HST reduction on power. You really don't see that on your bill if it's gone up $200, but you're then getting a reduction of $15 or whatever.
No, people didn't see it, but it was a big line item in the budget.
And
we saw that there.
And they've talked about it a number of times that we know that they did it. I just don't know how and what the impact is. But apparently they did it. So that's
absolutely
good. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to talk.
Yes.
I'm glad we did get to talk. I'm glad. Tim, anything you'd like to mention?
We'll
we got about a minute or so left here. So.
Well, I think, there's a few other priority areas that maybe we didn't touch on quite a bit. We'll wait and see what the transportation estimates are and see about the spending there. People are always concerned about their roads and the upkeep of them.
We always said in opposition, the devil will be in the details. So we'll see. Maybe there's no cuts anywhere and there's no tax increases, and they're just spending more.
Yeah, and housing and the rent cap, and there is money to go directly to renters, and so we'll see how that all goes.
Yeah.
Like going back to the big promise, healthcare. I think we all see it in our hospitals that there is a great need, and we've heard it from our doctors over the last little while. I mean, we live in Fredericton here. And you see a very acute problem with our hospital here in terms of the emergency room and the lines that go out the hallway. And there has to be other access points to the healthcare system. And it can't all be virtual and phone and all that sort of stuff, which is, fine in a pinch. But people like to have visits to a doctor or to a nurse practitioner. So I think that promise of more healthcare clinics, we really should keep our eye on that one.
Good. That's great. Good, guys.
Well, thank you, Tim, as always.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Really pleased to have Tim Porter with Porter O'Brien, a longtime reporter and journalist here in New Brunswick, and now co-owner of Porter O'Brien Government Relations and Media Relations Company. So if you need any help and assistance in those areas, give him a call. With that, we're going to say good night and thank our viewers for watching episode 137. Until next time, good night.
Good night.